Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 146. As always, I am going to start us off with a tune. Come on, where's this? Let me see. There we go. That's what I needed to do. Where are we? I need that. Sorry, folks in the chat. I'm talking to myself, of course. Bum, bum, bum. There we go. That. And that. There we go. Wow. Mm-hmm. And
Visibly weird. What's going on here, man? Says Duke's on mute, so I don't even know who's playing with tune or what. Duke? Duke. Yeah, it looks up on my own tonight, man. Don't even know what's bloody well happened. He just says he's on mute. Don't know what boomer tech problems there are today.
Did that music not play?
Well, it says you're on mute. And also
Yeah,
nothing's showing up.
All right, hang on. Wait.
Boomer tech got updated, man.
Right. Did that music not play, Mitch?
Nothing's showing up.
Wait 1 second, mate. Wait 1 second. Let me try this again. Very annoying. Very annoying. Sorry, guys. This is the usual Iron Duke Boomer Tech, which you get all the time from me. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Stop the screen. Then, let's see if I can do it properly. Share the screen. Let's see if it works this time. You never know.
Take up the white man's burden.
We'll get there eventually.
Send forth the best ye breed.
Apologies,
Go
chap.
bind
Apologies.
your sons to exile, to serve your captive steed, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God's sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror, and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine, and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heathen folly, bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, not tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living, and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden, and reap his soul's reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor, are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wait on God and you. Take white man's burden have done with childish days. The lightly prophet laurel, the easy young grudge praise, comes out to search our manhood through all of thankless years. The words with dear bought wisdom, the judgment of appears. Take off the white man's burden through all the thankless years.
And if I can unmute myself. Yeah, apologies, guys, for that. It wouldn't be an Iron Duke stream if there wasn't a bit of boomer tech in there. Although, as Tricky Boo correctly points out, technically I'm not actually a boomer. But of course, that was the excellent Chris Gard. Do go and check out his really good music channel, where he does not do boomer tech. So go and check that out. Good evening to my guest this evening, Mitch. How you going, mate?
Same old, same old.
As always. And Adamant, how are you going, my friend?
Yeah, good. Although I will point out that boomer is more a state of mind than an age. So,
well, in that case, that definitely does apply to me in some respects. Although I have come a very long way over the past 4 or 5 years, and you've known me for most of that time, Alan. So I have moved my position quite a long way over that period. So I've taken a few black pills, you know.
as we all have.
Yeah, sadly, you don't really have a lot of choice, do you? Really, these days. I was watching that stuff on Twitter earlier, Adam, and I don't know if you saw where they were melting down the statue of the great General Robert E. Lee.
Yeah, it's quite the image.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? It's like, and I mean, you know, he was known as an honourable and brave man, and I mean, he was offered the command of the Union forces and refused it because his state wanted him to command their forces, and that was where his first loyalty lay. I'm also fairly sure he didn't ever own any slaves either. But there we go.
Yeah, I mean, he was sort of 10 times the man that any of those people screaming out about how evil he was now.
100%.
Yeah, he was a real force to be reckoned with. I mean, you think, you know, the Confederacy during the earlier part of the war, they were massively outnumbered, and they basically had the Union on the run. You know, their only mistake was not taking it all, as is usually the mistake of the right. But
yeah, they wanted to get a peace treaty basically, and that was never going to happen. Certainly not under Lincoln, anyway. But I have to say my sympathies have always been with the Southern dudes because, like you say, they were heavily outnumbered. Not only in numbers of men, but also in terms of the money that the North had and the industry that the North had. But it's ridiculous that an American hero like Robert E. Lee, they're melting down his bloody statue. It's just craziness. It really is.
Yeah, one of the particularly good clips that's going around, I don't know who originally posted it, but it was quote tweeted by Raw Egg Nationalist. And they've put the footage of the faceplate being melted down to that clip of Jonathan Bowden talking about watching the fire in a crematorium.
Wow.
It's quite a good little clip.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, Victor Claros in the chat is pointing out something really true here. He was a great general. Doesn't matter if you were a supporter of the Union or the Confederacy, you can't deny he was a great general. And the South fought for 4 years against a much superior foe. So, and he was also quite an honourable dude. You know, he didn't treat his prisoners badly or anything like that. And also quite an intelligent bloke. You know, he made some quite intelligent he said some quite intelligent things, like, you know, it's a good thing that war is so terrible because otherwise we get to like it too much and all this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I've got like mixed opinion of in terms of his general abilities in terms of like leading a war, because he focused too much on Gettysburg. Meanwhile, the Union Army were splitting the country up, like they would send an army. Was it Vicksburg, if I remember correctly, or something like they would send in a force.
Yeah, that was the decisive thing. When they took Vicksburg, they kind of split the Confederacy in two. You know, because that was a vitally important place. But I mean, Lee could only be in one place, you know, and they could only, and his army of Northern Virginia was like the main Confederate army, and it was just very heavily outnumbered. Now, you can to some degree criticize his generalship at Gettysburg, certainly, I think, particularly like Pickett's charge, which really didn't stand much of a chance, in all honesty. But of course, by then he'd lost his best. His right hand man, Stonewall Jackson, who was another absolutely brilliant Confederate general, and he was actually killed by his own soldiers when they mistook him for the enemy.
Yeah, I believe it was. I think it was something like the Battle of Fredericksburg or something like that, where he didn't even suffer a triple figure of amount of casualties. Meanwhile, the Union lost of like 20,000 men. That was the kind of figure that Stonewall Jackson was. I think
he was another really great Confederate commander, and I think if he'd have been at Gettysburg might have turned out a bit differently.
Yeah, it's like in terms of the American Civil War, I find myself sympathising with the Southerners just because they're far more Anglo-Saxon, like genetic. When you look at the surnames and whatnot.
Oh, for sure, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Compared to the Northerners, because the Northerners, I mean. Yeah, so the thing was, I heard something like it was something like at least 20% of the Union Army were like Irish people who were drafted. So it wasn't.
Yeah, it was fair number. There were certainly a fair number, but there were also Irishmen who fought on the Confederate side as well, though.
Yeah, but like in terms of like, I think it's something like the Union Army. Like most of the troops they had were foreigners. Like they were like Germans, Irish. Most of them were not Anglo-Saxon.
A lot of immigrants. Certainly, there were a lot of immigrants for sure, but there were also quite a lot of old, kind of New England dudes who did fight for the Union just because that's where they grew up and their states were in the Union. You know, one of the things I always say about all soldiers, including those today, is that when you're a soldier, you can't choose your war; you get sent there. You know.
Yeah. So. But I still like I say, like the Southerners, like I can respect them far more, not just because they're able to like put up a good fight, but also because, let's face it, it's kind of like how I look at the Anglo-Saxons of Hastings, where they're kin, like they're my kin and forebears and so on. In the same way that the land of Dixie is kind of like a second England in a way when you look at the sort of Southern chivalry. I believe like the whole Southern gentleman.
Yeah, they did have that Southern aristocratic side for sure. Absolutely true. And also the colonies in the South were often a lot of the northern colonies were started by Puritans and people like this, like the Mayflower people and what have you. Whereas the Southern colonies tended to be a bit more royalist in the early days, in the sort of 1600s and so on.
Yeah. I think it was another one area where I think like Robert E. Lee, for example, he came from Shropshire, and there's like a lot of American families who trace their lineage to that area. But then you also have the West Country, I believe, where a lot of American farmers trace their lineage to, which is why the American R sounds different to ours. I think.
Yep.
So that's
for sure. I did actually invite Don the Pleb to join the stream tonight, so it's quite funny that we're talking about American history at the moment. But he might well be busy because he has like a homestead story going on, so that's perfectly possible. He's just busy basically. But I mean the American Civil War is quite interesting because certainly had the South won, then I think it would have changed history a lot. I mean, who knows what would have happened in the late 19th and early 20th century, if there'd have been Confederate States of America as well as a union. You know.
Yeah, I can look at you do look at the southern culture compared to the northern culture, where the northerners, I don't know, perhaps I'm generalizing, but the northerners came across because they're a lot more industrialized. They also had a lot more materialism.
They were much more industrialized in the 1860s for certain. Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah.
Whereas the southerners, because they're more agricultural, a lot more rural, etc., etc. And also the southern culture like promoted a sense of gentlemanliness. You had, like, I'm pretty sure everyone in the South, like farmers upwards, they all learned how to shoot a rifle at a young age, which is why the Confederate Army.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm pretty sure. Whereas the Northerners, they didn't have to learn that because they were safe away from all the Indian tribes, and they didn't have that culture same way the South did for, teaching people to defend themselves. It's kind of. Although I do look at.
Well, they were absolutely more rural for sure, but I mean, I think it's also well worth pointing out, particularly on a stream like this, that the vast majority of Confederate soldiers, vast majority of Confederate soldiers, didn't own a single slave. You know, they were farmers and stuff, but they didn't have enough money to employ slaves. That was just a few people, you know.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, they were just thinking, okay, let's say the slaves, because I mean, the slaves were freed. Let's say, I mean, okay, what would stop them from becoming like Nat Turner? Because I think it was a Nat Turner slave rebellion where they rebelled and then they killed a lot of white people before they got suppressed by the authorities.
Yeah, no, that certainly did happen. That certainly did happen. I mean, one of the things, I was talking to somebody about this last week, actually, that I don't know if you guys, Adam and Mitch, you've probably seen that AA stream, academic agent stream, where he looked at Liberia in West Africa. And of course, the British set up Sierra Leone as a place to send all these slaves that the Royal Navy intercepted and saved from being sent across the Atlantic. But it was a British colony with a British governor, and so there wasn't much corruption there or any of that stuff. Whereas what happened in the case of Liberia is the Americans set that up as the same sort of thing. And also as a place where, if they wanted to, American black people could go back to Africa. And some of them did, but not very many. But the first thing they did when they got there, these American black dudes, was to enslave the local Africans. It was like absolutely insane, you know?
Yeah, I think the original plan, or the eventual plan, was he wanted to send, almost all of them back.
Yeah, that was, but he never
was going to send them in much larger numbers. But I mean, it's kind of funny, isn't it? How we understood that they needed to be ruled, but the Americans, or at least the Unionists, had this idea of a liberal sort of African, almost Pan-African state.
Well, it was also a partly money thing, and I think because if the Americans had set a governor there, and that he would have required some troops and what have you, and that they just weren't prepared to spend that money at all.
I mean, one of the things we probably should have brought this up when we had that stream, with that little critique stream we did of Semiagog and Pete Quinones. But of course, another thing to bring up is that if you look at let's say King Leopold II in the Congo, a lot of the lefties will bring up that he was sort of that even other colonial European powers criticized what he did there. But if you read the critiques, the British were basically like, you trusted Africans with weapons? Like, what were you thinking?
100%. Yep.
It's not at all the sort of liberal position that a lot of people seem to now pretend the British Empire had.
They go well over the top about how bad the Belgian Congo was, and of course, in due course, the Belgian Congo was actually taken over by the Belgian government and not the king, and then things rapidly got better. But it was never as bad as some lefties will try and tell you today. Absolutely.
And of course, a little bit of a side note, but the guy who wrote that book on the Congo that all the lefties use today was a journalist, and he uses reports written by that French-British journalist who also wrote reports on I think they sometimes call it the blackening of the Rhine, or the blackening of the Rhineland, sorry, where the French flooded colonial
I know what
troops
you're
into that
talking.
part of Germany.
They did. Yes, they did. Yes.
And of course, the same people who say all this stuff about how evil the Belgians or King Leopold was in the Congo actually say that report is just bunk on the Rhineland. So, it's like the guy was actually probably right about the Congo, but they don't read him properly. And then when he writes about another instance, they just call him a liar anyway.
Absolutely,
it's kind of funny.
100%, man. I couldn't agree with you more. Because I actually looked into this stuff myself, and the reports about the Congo Free State, as people have been saying in the chat, they were well overblown. Ridiculously high figures for numbers of Africans who got killed and what have you. And I mean, just look at the history of Congo, Zaire, Congo Free State, whatever they've called it, because its names changed so many bloody times. Even to this day, it's still a pretty deadly, bloody place. It's like it's always been that way. I don't suppose it's ever been any different, to be honest. I'm good. Incidentally, I'd just like to say good to see Lady of Shalott in the chat. Good day, Lady of Shalott. Absolutely, all this stuff is overblown, and it's like I was trying to say earlier when we were talking about the American Civil War. The vast majority of Confederate soldiers certainly never owned a slave, couldn't afford a bloody slave, And Robert E. Lee himself never owned a slave, so it's his was not a slave-owning family at all. So I'm not quite sure why the Americans are melting down his statue, especially given that like he was a successful commander in the American-Mexican War in the 1840s, So I think he's a pretty genuine American hero, actually. But whatever.
Yeah, I might be getting the guy wrong, but the journalist I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure his name was Edmund Morel.
I think you might be right about that. I think you might. Are you thinking there should be some sort of early life history check there? Are you?
No. I think this is the guy that wrote about the Congo and the Rhineland. He was part French and part English. He was a journalist. I think he might have later become an MP, but he was like he was in like the British pacifist movement. So make of that what you will. But
I get it. You get these figures though, Alan. I mean, there's the dude Roger Casement, for example, who was a British agent in the Anglo-Boer War between 1899 and 1902. But then come the Easter Rising, he's supporting the Irish Republican Army and all this stuff. So you get these strange figures in history sometimes.
Yeah. Alice Liddell in chat said, wouldn't those officers have been European? Well, this is the thing. There weren't anywhere near enough Belgian officers in the Congo to really administer much. So they actually used local militias to largely rule in their stead, and those militias were quite barbaric, essentially to their own people.
Absolutely correct. I've got no arguments for that, mate. I just think it's true. Duke Valentino is saying Roger Casement was treated horribly in return. Well, you know what? He was, by any standards, a traitor, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry, I just think he was. Speaking as a English and British man, I regard him as a traitor. So, and I'm fully in favour of shooting traitors, but you got to. I mean, what's a traitor now, though? What's a traitor now? Some people would say we are a bit, but we're not. We're actually the patriots, and the traitors are the people who run the damn country. So
Oh yeah, like if you take it on balance as to what, like if you draw up an image and say this is what Britain as a nation is, or this is what England as a nation is, and then you align people as either traitors, nationalists, or patriots, you kind of get that's a more honest way of drawing the map up. And if you draw it up that way, we're not traitors, but
No,
you know.
absolutely not. I certainly don't regard myself as that, mate. When I joined the British Army as an 18-year-old, the reason I joined the British Army as an 18-year-old are exactly the same reasons that I now do this. Because I actually love Britain and the British and the Old Commonwealth, which of course includes Australia, Canada, New Zealand. It's love of my country that made me do that then and makes me do this now. So, and I'm sure that's true of all of us, pretty much.
Yeah. But Sir Garnet in the chat, because I love a Dune reference, said, referencing the Dune series, the British were definitely House Atreides. Yeah, but I also kind of like the idea of having, like, you know, a Sardaukar again. Like, just turn the Scottish Highlands into a barren wasteland, a tundra once again, where people live out to become hardy, and then they can become your royal guard.
I don't know, mate. Look, my father's military mates, like, because my dad was a soldier, and his military mates were mostly Glaswegians, including dudes who'd been in the Gordon Highlanders, 92nd and all this kind of stuff. Or they were Geordies or Mackhams from the northeast, which are another pretty tough people. And they were like diamond blokes. They were really good men.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, you couldn't have met guys who were kinder to small children and, just really good men. Like I first got my interest in the Napoleonic Wars from this Gordon Highlander dude, So, yeah, really, really, there's some damn good people in Britain, and there always has been, and I think there still are, but none of us have got any power whatsoever these days, and that is the tragedy.
But the thing is, I mean, like, those areas of the country produce those fierce, tough men because they were, even up until like the last century, were sometimes very tough places to live.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, look, Glasgow, for example, Glasgow and London were two cities, which definitely had, to survive in those places as a working class bloke, the work was hard. It was pretty violent sometimes, and you had to be a pretty tough bloke or you wouldn't survive. That's for sure.
Yeah, you had to be a real go-getter.
Yeah.
But even out in the rural areas, like down in the home counties, it was a little easier. But in like areas of the southwest or the far north, just getting through a winter in like the Shetland Islands or the
100%, 100%, mate. Totally true.
And even down in the southwest, I mean, obviously the weather was sometimes a little more tolerable, but those places could be like unremittedly tough places. I mean, even if you read, there's a book, I'm sure Peter Hitchens has brought it up, but there's a book from like the turn of from the early 20th century where it describes some of these villages in the West Country as just being utterly brutal places to live, like for a winter, like tons of poverty, near starvation sometimes. It really, really quite bleak.
Yeah, and I mean, also, look at the guys who lived in fishing communities, which, of course, back in the 19th century, that included places in Sussex or on the coast of Kent, and as well as like these days, we always think of Cornwall and the north of England and Scotland as being the fishing places. But in the 19th century, they were pretty much anywhere on the coast. And that was a pretty damn hard life too, although I think it would have been better than working in a factory, to be honest with you. But you were risking death at sea all the time, particularly in the days when like your only propulsion was sails. So, they were pretty damn tough people too.
Yeah.
But yeah, Britain was full of very tough people back in the day. It really was. And I mean, Mr. Gently Benevolent in the chat says, turn Scotland into a barren wasteland. Bit late, the Scots have done it already. Absolutely true, mate. I went out with a Scottish girl in the 1980s, and she went to a Scottish state school. But back then, the Scottish education system was easily the best in the British Isles. It was different to the English system. It was much better. She went to a state school, but she could speak and read Latin and Greek. which would not have ever happened to someone in the state school in England, pretty much, unless that had been their absolute specialisation, you know. But in Scotland, that used to happen. But of course, the SNP got in and have totally ruined the Scottish education system. At the same time as they want to make big time statements about what's going on in the Middle East, which has got nothing to do with the Scots, really, because of course, what's his name, Outman, the Scottish national leader these days, the Pakistani in the kilt,
Hamza Yusuf.
Yeah, Pakistani in a kilt. I'm more Scottish than he is. That's for sure, because I do have a little bit of Scottish ancestry.
I mean, if you want to see such a great encapsulation of like bringing foreign ethnic problems home, or here, I should say, you know, Hamza Yusuf. It's been talked about a lot this week, but this was in the news at the time, back in the early 2000s. Hamza Yusuf and his cousin started a group called the Muslim Foundation of Scotland, or something like that. The Scottish Muslim Foundation, something along those lines. And he essentially brought, like, because his wife's side of the family is from Gaza, you know, which has obviously come out this week because his stepmother's may or may not have been killed. I'm not sure, the specifics, but stepmother is, you know, his mother-in-law, and but back in the early 2000s, I think about 2004 or 2006, something like that, him and his cousin brought like Hamas commanders into Holyrood to speak to Scottish politicians. You know, and this is, I don't think they were prescribed as a terrorist organization then. I haven't bothered checking, but you know, this is the thing. Like what is his first act as a politician is to start a racial grievance group for Muslims and bring Muslim combatants from abroad into our parliamentary institutions. You know, it's so like that guy will sit there and go, "Oh, I'm just as Scottish as everyone else," and all these other Scottish like lefty liberal retards will say the same. I probably shouldn't say that on stream, but you know, they'll say, "Oh, yeah, he's just as Scottish as everyone else," but like his first act as leader was to get embroiled in foreign conflicts. You know, it's you know, it's just nauseating to even have to put up with these people.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I mean, I don't understand how any true Scotsman yes, I understand that's a joke, by the way, guys. I get it. I am saying that on purpose. But I don't understand how any true Scotsman, and you know, Alman and Mitch, that we've got some good young Scots lads on our Discord. No, how any true Scotsman can vote for this alien in a kilt, basically, which is what he is. You know?
Well, they don't by and large, do they? That's kind of the other issue. Like I often like to joke and say, well, Scotland's very white, but so they don't have to put up with the immigration. But of course they do, because you know, you look at like Celtic versus Rangers. That's an ethnic. There's a large underscoring of an ethnic rivalry between, like, you know, the Irish in Scotland, or the people of Irish ancestry, and you know, so they don't completely get off with this as well. They've got their own demographic problems in voting, and then you've got the fact that, you know, they know Hamza Yusuf is unelectable, so he's kind of doing the same as Rishi Sunak and just speed running as much of this crap as possible.
Yeah, 100%. But it's also remarkable that the Scottish National Party used to turn around and say stuff like, if we were independent, we could be neutral like Ireland, you know. But of course, Hamza Yusuf is not all that neutral as far as I can work out, but there we go. You know, but that's just me. Adaman, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up this week?
Not really. It's funny enough that it's probably the biggest news week in years, and yet it's also the dullest. It's not really anything particularly interesting. It's just more and more shit. I was kind of considering bringing up the Hamza Yusuf thing, but I've already, you know, brought that up. So
yeah, no, I just watched that and I just thought, wow, if I was a Scot, that would be just the thing I want to get involved in, is some flipping stupid local war in the Middle East that's really not going to affect Scotland in the tiniest degree, or certainly shouldn't, you know. But yeah, 100%, I totally agree with that. Mitch, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up, mate?
I haven't really been keeping up to date with the news. I thought Israel was actually invading the Gaza Strip yesterday.
Well, that's what I was reading, but have they not? I mean, because I'll be honest with you, like I've been pretty busy recently, and I haven't been keeping up with some of this stuff as much as I should have. But that's what I heard, is that they were actually starting this invasion, or was it just a raid or something that they did?
I mean, the amount of bombs they dropped last night was through the kitchen sink of a place, so that made me think it was an actual invasion. But it turns out to be like what other people are saying. Oh, it's just a raid. Like they're only doing it in one localized sector. It's some place called Beit Hanun or something like that. I don't know.
Look, as I've said before, Mitch, and I'm going to stick to this to the end of this conflict, if it doesn't drag us all in, which it conceivably could. But I'm going to stick to this. I don't care who wins that. I'm not on any side there. Neither of them are our friends. They're not.
Mm.
That's my absolute opinion.
I mean, you get on one hand, like you get Israel that they've been losing a lot of international support the past week or so after they bombed that hospital where it was something like five. Like,
there was much controversy around that, and I tried to read up on that, Mitch, and I still don't know who was telling the truth about that, because both sides are lying, because that's what they do. So
well, it's like you got Hamas, who they hate not just Israel but also the 4x2s very vicariously.
Yep, for sure.
And then you got Israel, who hates the Palestinians to the point of wanting to wipe them out. So you got two sides.
I've seen people on Twitter. You're getting Israelis on Twitter doing TikTok videos and stuff like this, where they're just taking the piss out of women and kids getting blown up. I mean, I don't go along with that either, to be honest. I really don't.
Yeah. So the thing about this is like, it's not like with Russia and Ukraine where both sides can come to the peace table and work out some sort of deal, provided the West stops supporting Ukraine. No, it's like with this war, it's the only way it will end is if one side is completely obliterated and is completely wiped out, root and stem, because both sides see that land as truly theirs, and they won't quit until the other side's gone, because that's the stakes of a war. So I don't really see why. No, I mean, on one hand, I can get why people support Palestine, because it's like, oh well, a lot of Israeli NGOs are engaged in shilling over mass migration of our end. However, the Palestinian side, you get plenty of those people who are just they just represent the Muslim side of immigration, where they just think, oh, Israel is a white supremacist colony, American puppet, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, Mitch, my view is neither of those groups are our friends. Like, the Palestinians are not allies of the Brits in any way, shape, or form, and nor are the Israelis. So I'm just totally neutral. If they want to kill each other, let them kill each other. It should have nothing to do with our people. But of course, Britain sent a warship there. The Americans have got two carrier groups there. And everyone is on a hair trigger about this, that, and the other. And you got all these American rhino politicians who are saying they're going to wipe out Iran. Why? I have no idea, but that's what they're saying. I mean, this is my honest view, is that enough young British, American, Australian, and other Western young men have been killed in useless wars in the Middle East over the last 20 years that we really do not want another one. I don't think we need more widows and orphans or more mothers and fathers who lose their sons. It's just ridiculous. And politicians who are pushing for that, I think, are evil myself. I really do. Because what are you going to win there? You're not going to win anything, So that's my own opinion on that stuff. If I'm really,
I mean, that's kind of how the whole thing feels. Though, like I was saying this before I came on to someone else. I was like, I haven't really got anything to talk about, because, like, even if you take whether you take an anti-war position or whatever, you're so powerless in this situation. You're just a cog in the machine. They're gonna do what they do, and we're just gonna get dragged along with it.
Yep, exactly right. exactly right, Hammond. But I mean, I'm being honest. I just don't want to see more Anglo-Celtic and Western white young men getting killed for a war that's going to do none of us any good. It's going to do none of us any good.
Mm.
Sorry,
it's just.
I know.
It's the only thing that, as Morgoth would say, the only thing that we can be sure about is that whatever happens there'll be thousands more in air quotes refugees heading for Europe. That's all that ever happens about this stuff, really.
But have you seen that they've tried to, off of the back of this, bring back the narrative of that we have to let in Afghan refugees?
Oh, for God's sake!
They've reignited that narrative again, and they're now saying they're going to bring them in via Pakistan, I believe.
Mm.
Oh yeah, because Pakistan said they were deporting the whole load of them, and our government just comes in time just to act as a savior for all of them.
Mm.
So that's nice.
But Mitch, as we were saying before we started the stream, isn't it strange that the British government, which always says, we can't deport all these illegal economic migrants who arrive in small boats across the channel. They always say they can't do it. It's illegal, but apparently they can. If you go on big protests in London and you're going on about various small-hatted people, then you can be deported. Apparently, which I find a bit strange, I have to say.
Well, there's that video, isn't there, of that guy with the he's holding up the British flag, and
the cops arrest him. Yeah.
And it's implied that he said something racist, but if you watch the clip, like, the police are warning them beforehand. They're saying, like, if you say something even slightly racist, but even then there's like enormous disproportionate levels of force being applied to this one guy versus this broader protest. And then there's not, people say that, that's proof that he did something wrong, but there's no evidence of that. He then gets arrested anyway. And the same people saying
he was carrying a Union flag. For God's sake, he was carrying the flag of his own damn country in his own capital city, and the British police arrest him. Not all these twats who've got Palestinian flags and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
it's just bloody war crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the fear is always that the white people are gonna kick off. That's always the fear.
That's
like
the big fear, I think. Yes,
someone brought up. There's a book, I forget what it's called. I literally sent someone like an entire essay on it in Telegram, which I don't think they fully appreciated. But even there, it's from some town where they did like in America where they did like forced busing quite early on as a sort of trial.
Mm-hmm.
And they essentially point out that it ends quite badly. There's like a massive increase in violence and other such issues. And even then, when he tries to bring this up to these like liberal academic types who are trying to pretend it isn't happening, they're then just like, oh yeah, imagine the backlash. It's like that Norm Macdonald joke like 30 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I sit here constantly hoping there'll be a peaceful YouTube. Peaceful. I'm hoping there will be a peaceful backlash. I keep hoping so, but it's so hard to do in a country like Britain. Where the population is the real Anglo-Celtic population has been so deracinated in so many ways. The constant propaganda on the mainstream media and all the rest of it. It's really, really difficult to do, I think. But yeah, I keep hoping there will be. But yeah, this is why they arrest dudes with Union Jacks in London and not thousands of aliens in the country marching down the street with bloody Palestinian flags. They've got bugger all to do with Britain, And don't get me wrong, I'd be equally against thousands of Israelis marching down London streets with Israeli flags. I don't think either of them should be doing that thing,
Yeah. A few people in chat, including Australian, a little while ago, brought up about a clip from these protests, and I know the clip they're talking about, but I can't find it. there's basically this clip that's gone around of one of these protests that's kind of broken into a small bit of fisticuffs, and there's this English guy in there that's like, oh, this is our town or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is he says, but it's quite a good little clip. I can't find it now though, which is a shame.
Yep. I think there are still a lot of base people in Britain and in other old Commonwealth countries. Indeed, I know there are quite a few base people still in the USA, But the trouble is that the guys who are the good guys don't have any bloody political power whatsoever. None.
Yeah.
That's our problem.
Mm.
You can go along AA's route of having groups of tens and all this kind of stuff that he talks about. But the fact is, at the moment, we have no bloody political power whatsoever. It's us who are the dissidents, and our enemies are absolutely have a total grip on the controls of power.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that is ultimately the eventual idea behind, like something like the network of 10 idea is that
For sure.
is that you have an elite of people that can swoop in when the time is right, when it's when the institutions have collapsed enough that they're at a weak point and they need some competency to be injected back in. I kind of think this is also why AA was kind of hoping for like the containment strategy, because that's an opportunity for like a network of tens to start infiltrating.
So you're talking about if they put the woke away and all that kind of stuff.
Put the woke away, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that, mate. But yeah, I know.
I did
AA
wonder.
does.
I think I said this one of our previous streams, like last week or a week before, but I did think for 5 minutes he might have been right, and we were wrong. But now I'm actually more certain than ever that they're not going to do it.
No, I don't think they will either. Alice Little, 1872 in the chat says, I would say that less than 5% of white Brits are based, to be honest. I think it's a bit higher than that, Alice. I don't know what you'd say, Ammon or Mitch, but I'd say a fair bit higher than that, actually.
Not sure about what Mitch would say, but it does depend a lot on what you define as based. Like if you just go on like immigration, which is like the big one, it's an enormous amount of people. But if you go on, well, even then though, there's a lot of people that are like anti-immigration, but they're not based enough that they would say send them back. But there's still a fair few of those. But at the same time, if you were to say like how many people out there like actually believe in like a return of a based warrior aristocracy.
That then you're getting lower. Getting lower.
Yeah.
But I reckon even then you might get up to 10% or something. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, Mitch, what do you think, mate? Given you come from a different part of the country, what's your experience about what the area where you're around? What percentage of Anglo-Celtic Brits in your area would you say were based?
In terms of overall, or just like, I mean, everyone agrees on like, oh, we need to cut immigration, for example, but then they still vote for the Uni Party. They'll still, or they'll just be apathetic and not bother voting, which, it's, I don't really blame the latter because there's just nothing. Around my neck of the woods. I'll definitely say like, oh no. But if you were to get into more esoteric stuff, like I don't know, if I like for example, I doubt many people would support my sort of autism about I don't know, bringing back Old English or whatever. But if I were to talk to them about I don't know, but like because I mean I do appreciate my esoteric thoughts about I don't know, Anglo-Saxonism and Anglo-Saxon identity. But if I were to ask them about mass immigration or I don't know how bad dating is for young blokes my age.
Oh yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, 100%. Look, I've done streams on this, and it certainly is a problem for sure. I know it is. I noticed Australian in the chat said semi-based, certainly 20 to 30%. And given Australian is an Australian, and of course I live in Australia, although I am an Englishman who lives in Australia, or I am a Pommy. I would say, look, the recent defeat of the Labour Party's idea of the Aboriginal voice to Parliament, and it was a decisive defeat of that. And we talked about it the other week. Lady Charlotte kindly came on the stream to talk about it because she was involved with that. That shows that even in Australia, there are more based people than many people might have thought, you know?
Yeah. Rupert gave a really good talk at last year's Skildings event. Friend of the channel, Rupert.
Yeah. You mean Rupert August?
Yeah. When I'll get his permission
guy.
beforehand, but when I get that event book through, I kind of wanted to read through. Maybe not all of it. I'll get his. I'll obviously ask him first, but hopefully read through some bits on the stream at some point. But and he brought up this idea of restorationism, or this idea of modeled on his examples were Constantine. You know, the what do they call him? The Marlborough Emperor, I think they call him. This idea that he'll come back, you know, when the day is nigh. And similarly, obviously very similar to like the Arthurian legend. And he wanted to, he like brings up a few examples where like the Greeks, not even that long ago, quite recently, in fact, really believed that was the case, that there was like a new Constantine.
Cool.
And he says that he kind of wants to do that in this country, essentially create a sort of a mythos, sort of an animating mythos that people can herald around, which is the idea that there is like there is a king coming, and we need to like prepare the ground for him and build Camelot and get everything ready. Not like, you know, obviously not literal Camelot, but you know, figuratively get the institutions get ready, get the groundwork laid.
Yeah,
and
Nathan Hood is another friend of the channel who's been on this stream, and an excellent man. And I know he's very strongly into that as well. You know, this mythological idea that there is somebody who's going to come back. And I mean, you can also look at things like Drake's drum in England. That's another legend of the same sort, isn't it?
Yeah.
Adam?
Yeah, these legends pop up quite a lot. You know, kind of like a coping mechanism for people to survive through dark times, I suppose. Similar to now.
Yes.
But
exactly right. Exactly.
But yeah, and it's like and some people had a problem with that in the Q&A at the event at the time, and I also saw some people doing after event like roundups where they also had a bit of a problem with that talk. And I get what people were saying. They were kind of saying, like, could you really get a large percentage of the country to get on board with this? And it's kind of similar to, you know, what we're saying here. You know, how many of the country is really based? Like, you can talk about a few popular policy positions, but once you start to get into the weeds, like, how many people are still with you? And it's a tough one, but at the same time, you can look at like how they could you know, animate people around stuff like the coup. Like, to be honest, let's be honest, pretty lame stuff, and they could really get people on with this sort of crusader spirit.
Yes, they could. Yeah.
Which I also think speaks to something else that people on the right don't talk about enough, which is that in the same way that everything else runs downhill, energy also runs downhill. Like, if a people seem spiritualless and rudderless, it's because their elites are degenerate.
Certainly, yeah, 100%
declined piece of shit. And if you replace them with more energy, more youthful, more spirited, a more spirited elite, that you can transform things quite drastically. But
definitely, I think that's definitely true. And but I also think, you know, one of the things I try and do on this channel, and I haven't done it enough lately. Apologies, people, but I am trying to do more of it. Is like I think it's very important for people to understand their history and their ancestors and stuff. And like, you know, they constantly try and make us these days ashamed of our ancestors. And I'm not in the tiniest bit ashamed of any of my ancestors. They were really, really great, good people. You know, they were good, they were brave, they were courageous, they were very imaginative. And we have to get this across to our people that, you know, we come from a great stock. We come from a great stock.
Mm.
And you'll get the lefties all turn around and say, well, what somebody did 250 years ago, this is because lefties are always this dichotomy with these twats. On the one hand, they'll say, oh, well, you've got nothing to do with what someone did 250 years ago. On the other hand, they'll say, oh, but you owe reparations for what people did 250 years ago. It's just utter bullshit. I mean, should I go to the Italians and say, oh, well, you used to enslave some British people, so we want reparations? It's ridiculous nonsense. It just is.
Well, the funny thing is, I actually came across a study a few years back. I don't know if Robert Toombs mentioned it or if it was someone else, but anyway, I came across this study, and it's quite funny actually, because it shows that people in Britain with like quote unquote Norman names still have more preferential outcomes when it comes to educational attainment at private schools.
What a surprise!
And that's a more traceable sort of systemic privilege from historical events that lefties like to talk about than anything they like to bring up today. And that's been running for 1,000 years at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean 1066 onwards for sure. Yeah, absolutely right. But I'm not at all surprised about that, to be honest with you, mate. But on the other hand, I would wonder how many of those people are actually in like high positions of political power anymore. I would wonder about that, because there are quite a lot of the aristocracy in Britain that, or in England specifically, who are not in power, if you see what I mean. I mean, okay, they seem to go to the House of Lords, but the House of Lords has no power anymore.
Yeah, they seem to be allowed like token positions in like business consulting and banking and stuff like that. There was actually a story a little while ago of a guy who seemed to be of, I would say, like Norman extraction. And he was a son of a lord who had just recently passed away. And he was giving up the family estate. He was selling it off so that he could pursue his career in London. The IQ shredder where he had this wife and no kids. And so even, I mean, that elite's also been like massively hollowed out, but as they all have. But
I think they were all right, and a lot of those dudes were okay up until World War One. I mean, a hell of a lot of them got killed in World War One. One of the things that one of the myths is that in World War One, all the British working class guys got killed, but none of the aristocrats did, which is actually not true at all. Like a higher percentage of aristocrats got killed in World War One than the British working class did. But what I would say about World War One is that it killed off a huge number of the best people of all classes in Britain and the Old Commonwealth, because they were the guys who volunteered. They were the guys who were at the front during the assaults and all the rest of it. So it killed off the best people, not only of the aristocracy, but of the middle class and the working class, all of those guys, because the best ones were the ones who mostly got killed because they volunteered first and they were in the front during the assaults.
Yeah. I mean, not to use the word too many times in a single stream, but well, the world wars were a very dysgenic happenings.
Yep, 100%. Well, Vex Peril in the chat says mugs. I'm sorry, I don't regard them as mugs. They were the best people in our country of all classes, right? Doesn't matter if it was Lord somebody, because a lot of them got killed. Trust me.
I mean, their main mistake was still putting a lot of faith in an institution that was probably just starting to not deserve it anymore.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, nobody in 1914 in the public, and I don't even think in most of the aristocracy realized that in 1914.
Well, this was another thing, because I said earlier, since we've gone on to World War One, I said earlier, like literally World War III happening in the press, and I just like no one gives a damn. Like it's just out of fucks to give, essentially. What did people feel this way before the First World War? Because I know that again, friend of the channel, Rupert's talked about this, and a number of
Yep.
other people have as well,
Yep.
about how animated the British public were, how unified they were at the start of the First World War.
Which they were, yes.
And that doesn't exist now. Admittedly, it's different. You know, it's not a war on the continent. It's sort of, but they're definitely, like, despite the power of the media apparatus against us, significantly more reach, significant more potency than before. They were a lot more sophisticated than they were back then. I say that actually. Some of that Ukraine propaganda that we've seen over the last couple of years is laughable. But
yes, for sure,
but,
for sure.
But that aside, the potency and the reach is still significant. And yet,
look, what I would say, Armin, to that is that hang on, I had a point I wanted to make it. What I would say to that is there's a really good stream that Apostolic Majesty just did, and it's not very long. It's only about an hour, maybe less actually, which talks about why did Britain join World War I in 1914 and how big a mistake that was. And he talks about some of the stuff that I've talked about on some streams, like going back to trying to turn the British Empire, or at least the old Commonwealth white empire, into something real. And he goes on about that stuff. He talks about how the last really pro-British and great prime minister was Lord Salisbury, you know, who was prime minister until 1902. And it's a really good stream. I think Apostolic Majesty really hits the nail on the head on that little stream of his. 1914 and joining the First World War in 1914 was the beginning of the end of the British Empire. Basically, it was the original sin of Great Britain and the Empire. And of course, the number one person who really wanted to join that war was Winston Churchill, of course, because Winston Churchill was Winston bloody Churchill. But you know,
yeah, something else I actually came across this week, which kind of struck me a little bit, and it came from a weird angle as well, which was that Churchill and Stalin actually got on better than I originally realized.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised about that, to be honest with you.
Because I've always heard leftists claim that, like, FDR and Stalin were the ones that were pally, and Churchill was sort of seen as this sort of drunk that stank of piss and was kind of excluded from the shindigs, was kind of just in the background at Yalta. But then I find out that Churchill's favourite brandy was one that Stalin got him to try and then sent him a shipment of. And apparently FDR would go to bed early and the two of them would stay up drinking till quite late.
Absolutely, I can well believe that. But of course, what really happened was that in 1945, because Britain was basically bankrupt. Well, actually, Britain had been bankrupt since 1943, and Churchill, Britain had basically, by 1943 onwards, Britain became a military colony of America, basically, nothing else. Churchill was a big socializing, drinking type dude. And I'm sure if he could have got away with it, he would have executed almost as many people as Stalin did. But you know, I'm no fan of Winston Churchill at all. He was half American and constantly proved it, as far as I'm concerned. So you know, like he used to call his mother, who was an American millionaire's daughter, his fairy princess, and his mother was basically an upper class whore, and that's the only way you can realistically describe her, to be honest.
Yeah. Someone said, did Stalin smoke cigars? Not as far as I know. He's a pipe smoker.
Yes.
Apparently, he used to, if he ran out of pipe tobacco, he used to crush up cigarettes and take the tobacco out of them. I imagine that would have made his pipe sour pretty quick, to be honest.
But on the other hand, he would never really have run out of anything, because in the socialist paradise, he was the number one dude.
Yeah. You never want for anything as long as you're the guy at the top.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
But,
Raw Biscuits is telling me that Churchill's mother was a modern woman. Up to a point, I would agree with you, Raw Biscuits, but we do still have some quite good modern women. I mean, Lady Charlotte's in the chat, for example, who is a very good wife and mother. So we can't generalize too much on that stuff, dude, to be honest, I don't think. People are asking me if I smoke pipes. I did once smoke a pipe. My son smokes a pipe all the time, by the way. But there we go.
yeah.
Yeah. My son always smokes. That's the only way he smokes.
Oh, very
from an
nice.
occasional
I
cigar.
like my pipe, to be honest. I smoke the
Well,
occasional
it's
cigar,
quite
but
it's quite traditional.
yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
and also far less dangerous by all accounts. So
Yeah, there's a lot less. I mean, even between cigars and pipe tobacco, there's a lot less. Even in stronger pipe tobaccos, there's a lot less tobacco than a lot less nicotine than in a
and
cigar.
of course, you don't tend to draw it into your lungs so much. I mean,
No.
with cigars, you're not supposed to at all. But like even with pipe, not so much.
Some pipe smokers do. If they're former cigarette smokers, they might do.
Yeah.
I will sometimes just draw in a breath into my lungs, but usually by accident. But do you know what brand of pipe tobacco your son likes?
I don't, mate. To be honest,
Ah.
I've never asked him.
See, I'm probably a bit of a normie on this, but I like the Peterson.
Okay.
Brand.
Well,
'Cause
next time I speak to him, I'll ask him and let you know. But yeah, no, I haven't asked him. To be honest. I did smoke a pipe myself for a little while, but not for long.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What did you smoke?
Tobacco, I can't even remember now, mate. This was donkeys.
St. Bruno's or something like that.
Yeah, it probably was actually. I was probably crass enough to smoke that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Probably was, to be honest. But I just thought, yeah, okay, because I was back in the day. I used to be really into stuff like Alan Quatermain and all this sort of stuff. You know, these Victorian adventure novels in Africa and what have you. And Alan Quatermain, of course, was a pipe smoker. They've never made a decent Alan Quatermain film. I wish they would. Like they've made two, but they were both utter crap. But sadly,
Yeah, Pierce Brosnan said he said, wait, where is it? I like smoking Nicaraguan cigars. Cuban quality control is abysmal these days. Yeah, I find that. I like my favorite used to be the Romeo y Julietas, but I like the little Petit Royales, the little short ones, and the number 3s, the bigger ones. But the quality control can be those ones aren't too bad. But I remember buying a set of H. Upmans, and like one of them was great, the other one was pretty good, and then the third one, which was the same, they were the same type. They were all 54 Magnums. The third one was just bad, and then I bought another one, and that was kind of shoddy as well. And I was like,
okay.
Bit of a shame. But I've been smoking a lot of those. I don't know how you say it. Placencias.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
They're Nicaraguan ones. They're pretty good. There's one called like the Reserva 1886 or something. It's so strong. I never get nauseous from tobacco, but I do get a little nauseous smoking that. But they're genuinely very nice.
Yeah, I suppose it depends how many times you puff it and how many times you. Yeah, exactly. Listen, I've been a cigarette smoker since I was 14, and I'm quite old. So yeah. But the price of cigarettes in Australia today is just entirely insane. It's about $65 for 50 cigarettes in Australia now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, of course, all that money goes to the government. So yeah, it's mostly tax.
Yeah, that is the only sort of sore point on them. I wouldn't mind. You know, if the government decides to say, you know, the king or whatever says, look, I don't fully appreciate this, I'm going to tax it more. That's fine by me, but I just don't like the fact that I know where the tax money goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Under our current regime, and it's abysmal.
Yep, 100%. And I mean, you know, the British Armed Forces have never been smaller and weaker in their history, going back to the 1600s. Never, ever been smaller and weaker than they are today. And yet, the British government is taxing the British people more money than they ever have been. And hardly any of it's going on British defence. It's just going on we give it away to Ukraine, we give it away to India, we give it away to everywhere, basically, except anything that will do the Brits any good.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Mm.
It's really ridiculous. Mitch, did you have a subject that you wanted to bring up, mate? Because I know you tend to keep your eye on what's happening in Ukraine and to some degree the Middle East, and I wondered if you had anything you wanted to talk about regarding that, because I did notice that although everyone's attention has been focused on the Middle East over the last couple of weeks, in Ukraine, the Russians are actually starting to do rather well. So,
that story already was. I had an offensive to take this town called it's a city called Avdiivka, which
yep.
It's heavily entrenched, heavily built up over the past 8-9 years. And the main reason the Ukrainians have it is because it's a good artillery position to bombard Donetsk with. So that's why the Russians want to take it, is because Donetsk
then they won't be able to artillery attack the women and children in this town, which they've been doing for years now. I know that, mate. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, the Russians didn't attack. First, I was hearing that the Russians were failing, no tactical finesse, and that they were losing tens of tanks in the space of a day and whatnot. Then now I'm hearing that they're taking actually a lot of ground to the point where the MSR, like the main supply route, from for the sake of Avdiivka, is only 7 to 9 kilometers wide.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine Avdiivka is going to become another Bakhmut if the Ukrainians really don't pull their finger at their arse in regards to that sector. But then again, it was all, even before this offensive, it was on like a salient surrounded by 3 sides almost. So in hindsight, they should have just pulled back anyway and just cut the losses, because let's face it, however much you entrench that area, the thing is the Russians have got so much artillery, so many drones, so much firepower to devote to that sector that the first line of defense.
And I mean, total artillery superiority, total air superiority. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so from a perspective of let's say a Ukrainian soldier serving in that sector, you just it's very black pilling. Like when you look at the Ukrainian soldiers, they've got ears bleeding and everything, but they've just been ordered to just stay, defend to the last man, yada yada yada. So it's like a Festung situation from World War II played out.
Being surrounded and just being reduced, because ultimately, if you're isolated, you're gonna lose. You absolutely just are. And of course, the attention of the Biden regime in America, and of course, I hesitate to call it the Biden regime because that senile old bugger don't run anything. But whoever does run America, and I don't think any of us really know who does, but it ain't Biden, that's for sure. Its attention is now focused on Israel, and so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the main battle that was waged around Avdiivka was a slag heap, I believe it was, which the main reason why both sides fought viciously on that was because it had a domineering site for miles and miles.
Yeah. Gave them observation for 100%. I'd see that.
Yeah. So both sides fought viciously for that. Like, you're talking companies and battalions just devoted to just take that place, with heavy loss on both sides, I believe. I think the Russians took most of it though, which is why they're able to now push onward to take more positions off the Ukrainians. So as I say, it's not looking good for the Ukrainians.
They do seem to be doing pretty well at the moment, Mitch. Like that place is not too far from being cut off.
Yeah, it was all, even before the offensive, it was surrounded on 3 sides by the Russians. Now, as I said, the MSR, the main supply route, is only 7 to 9 kilometers wide. And that was like a week ago. I don't know how much it's been squeezed since now, up until now. But I can't imagine like Avdiivka lasting throughout the winter.
Yep. No, I really, man, I think the Russians will take that place probably this winter. But I've been saying for a long time, and other military dudes or ex-military dudes I respect, like for example Don the Pleb, who is an ex-US Marine Corps dude who served in Afghanistan. Most of us have been saying for a long time, like there isn't any way that Ukraine can win this war. So it just isn't. There is no way Ukraine can win this war. And the only iffy factor is like how many Ukrainians get killed before the Ukrainians realize this,
Yeah, I mean, last I heard, it was something like 90, like the aid that America gave to Ukraine recently, in the past couple of weeks, is like 7% compared to what it was like a few months ago.
Yep.
So you can just imagine, like America's got that reason to do graceful exit away from Ukraine and just revert to having revert to having Palestine versus Israel to be the next current thing status.
Can I just answer Simple Pirate in the chat, because he's just mistaken something. He's saying you lot support Israel. Why? No, we don't. I'm sorry, we don't. Well, I can't speak for Adam and Mitch, but myself, I am entirely neutral. I don't support Israel and I don't support Palestine. But they can. I hope they don't kill too many of each other's women and children. But other than that, I don't give a shit about it, to be honest.
I'm more hostile to Israel than Palestine, but I don't really care about either.
Yep, I'm the same, mate. Yeah, the same.
Yeah, I don't particularly care about either. I just want Israel to get screwed over.
Yeah, look, absolutely. But I mean, the idea that we're big Israel supporters, I don't know where anyone got that idea from, because we're certainly not. And I do agree with Steve in the chat. This is my own view. A plague on both your houses. That's my fault. And I've said this twice now in this stream. I don't want young Anglo-Celtic men or guys from the Anglosphere or the West to go and get killed in this stupid war, which has got nothing whatever to do with the vast majority of us. Really hasn't. Why do we care about this? Because I don't get it, because I don't. I just don't. Sorry. Look, I don't regard Israel as a friend of Britain. I don't regard Israel as a friend of Australia.
Well, this is actually the thing that does my nut in. I know the subject's moved on, so we shouldn't go back to Israel too heavily. But we are talking about a country that to bring about its inception by those paramilitary groups bombed our embassy in Rome.
They were terrorizing and killing British soldiers, British women and children. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, totally true.
It's kind of sad how that just doesn't get brought up. Sergeant's Affair, King David,
100%.
Literally, Menachem Begin was like orchestrating the bombing of like the British embassy in Rome.
The Stern Gang, as Victor Claros has said in the chat, 100%, mate. Again, totally agree. I mean, even if you're American, go and look at what happened to the U.S. Ship, the USS Liberty. Go and look what the Israelis did to that ship.
Mm.
I mean, there you go. Vex Peril is even like great minds think alike. Of course, this was a total mistake. When the Israelis bombed and shelled and machine gunned the US Liberty, which was a US warship with US blokes on board, that was just a mistake, okay? It really was. It wasn't that they didn't want the Americans to record what was going on somewhere else. Well, no.
Yeah, and of course you can look at, you look at the hostility between, let's say, British and American ships in the interwar period, and then that happens to the USS Liberty by a young Israel, and just nothing gets said. It's
oh, they covered it up, mate. They still cover it up. I mean, you will never see anything said about the USS Liberty on mainstream media. They'll never talk about it, even though the Israelis were killing, and they did kill quite a few American sailors.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got no problem with what you guys are saying there. But the idea that we're pro-Israel is not correct. I would say I'm not pro-Palestinian either, because, like, don't get me wrong, your Palestinians will go into some little concert full of little English girls and they will blow it to smithereens.
Yeah, fuck those guys too.
Yeah, fuck those two guys too. I hate all of them. I got no time for any of them.
The only beneficial outcome from this we can see is that they will just slaughter each other, but that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I don't want women and children dying over.
No, exactly.
Listen,
YouTube, but actually, in truth, for once, I'm not just saying in Minecraft for YouTube, but in truth, I don't want women and children on any side to get killed. I really don't. But apart from that, I don't give a crap. Go at it, boys. You know,
yeah,
so long as our young men don't get involved, that's just what I care about.
The optimum outcome for me is that I can be sitting in some cafe somewhere getting a breakfast, and I can read about it in the newspaper, and I can look to the man next to me and go, "Oh, what a tragedy!" And that's as far as it goes.
Yep, 100%, mate, 100%. That's exactly my view too. It's like, you know, we have got bigger problems than that in Britain, in the Old Commonwealth, in the Anglosphere, in the Western world. We have so many enemies, some of whom are our own people, I have to say, supposedly. But yeah, that's what I get concerned about. It isn't what Israel and Palestine want to do to each other. That's not my problem. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, the only reason I would have sent a British warship to there would be to evacuate actual British nationals, and not dual nationals, I might add, but actual British nationals. That's the only thing I would have sent a ship there to do. Because presumably the dual nationals will want to stay and fight anyway, I'm guessing. You know. Purely guessing, of course, but whatever, you know. Yeah, Sauron is saying that Blackpilled has done some great streams in the last week. Blackpilled is a really good dude. He makes very, very good videos, and I like him a lot. And for anyone who doesn't know, he's an American dude, but very based. And I think he's on what's his platform, dudes? Atman, do you know what he's on?
No.
I know he's got Telegram. I think he's got
Odyssey. Yeah, he absolutely does. But I'm trying to think. He was on that. Look, AA did a stream last week, which was worth watching, by the way. It was the best video essayists. Sauron, thank you. It's Odyssey. Okay, thank you, mate. But yeah, he did a stream on this, and he was one of the higher ones on AA stream. And yeah, he's on Odyssey. So Blackpilled is a good dude. Not on YouTube anymore, but like YouTube is like.
I think he is still on YouTube, but he just doesn't upload here.
Yeah, because, you know, he wouldn't last very long if he did. I mean, we have to be quite careful. So, you know.
Yeah, Blackpilled is good. If you know, if you're an American, and like I think the first one, I came to him a bit late. I think the first one was that he did was actually the one AA brought up on that stream, which I didn't finish, but it's the one where he talks about Pleasantville, which was a film I saw as a child. And,
yeah, I saw that. That was a really good one. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, he really sort of blows that film open. He does a really good stream actually as well. If people track it down on Odyssey, he does a really good stream on the oh god, what was it called? Like the Satanic Panic. And he goes into a series of murders. He covers a series of killings, which they did a documentary on in America. I can't remember. Was it called like? Was it called like the killings in the Hollywood Hills? Even though it's not in those Hollywood Hills, it's in different ones, or has it got a different name? Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really good. That's really worth tracking down and going into. Just how sort of grotesque some of these documentary makers were in sort of peddling this subversion.
for sure. I mean, someone mentioned about Pleasantville. I mean, Pleasantville, like it's basically an enormous pro-abortion propaganda movie. That's what it really is. That's all it is, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, Black-pilled Devon Stack, as Puffwagon said in the chat, he's a good dude, and he makes very good videos. He does. And yes, I agreed, as Lady Shot pointed out in the chat, that I think Morgoth deservedly got the first place, because Morgoth sometimes catches that old English Anglo-Saxon thing. You know, I mean, I remember watching a video he did years ago about some very old tree that he used to go and visit with his little dog, you know, because Morgoth's got a little dog before. And Morgoth sometimes just catches things so well.
Yeah, you don't get many autobiographical video essayists in the British right-wing space, but he's one of the few.
Did you meet him, Adam, when you were at the event?
I did, yeah.
Oh, cool, man. That would have been cool. I would have liked to have done that. But yeah, excellent.
He's slightly different than I expected, but yeah, lovely guy.
Excellent, man.
Genuinely very funny as well when you talk to him. Like,
oh, I bet. Yeah, he strikes me that he's got a pretty good sense of humor.
Yeah.
Of course, I immediately liked him because like he goes everywhere with his little terrier dog. So
yeah, that's
immediately a good plus as far as I'm concerned. Anyone who likes dogs is probably a good person, because they generally are. In all honesty, that's a good judge of good people.
Yeah. Lady of Shalott said, "I've never heard Morgoth as angry as when he was talking about grooming gangs. He had been reading the reports of Rotherham, Telford, and Rochdale." Yeah, that 100. Is one of the things you can really like pick apart. Like when you're trying to sort of like pick up on where a person comes from. Like an English person will get insurmountably angry for that stuff. You know, an English right winger. Because I do as well.
Yep, me too. Me too.
I tried recording a video when I was making videos ages ago, and I was going to go into the actual grooming gang report, and I was just too mad, to the point where like I had a medical condition flare up because I was getting so stressed out about it.
Oh, listen, you know, when you're talking about these in air quotes grooming gangs, people need to realize, and some of the non-English people, non-British people in the chat, you need to realize we're talking about little girls as young as 11 who were they were raped repeatedly. They were traded around. Some of them were branded. They were constantly sexually insulted. And their dads sometimes would try and go and save them, and the cops would arrest the dad and let the Pakistanis and others who were doing this stuff just get away with it.
Yeah,
because sometimes the cops were Pakistanis, you know. But yeah.
I mean, it's like, I know that something that's come up previously is, I remember like Dave the Distributist, who I do like a lot. I love his content, but
he's an excellent chap, Dave. Yeah.
Like I was talking to another American about this at the event over breakfast, and you know, one of the things that came up was like, because Dave's kind of like a formerly a Californian shitlip, and he's still within that realm by and large, even though he's like a very good dissident thinker now. You know, but it kind of comes out in funny ways, like Dave was saying that. You know, that like, because Muslims are like a fellow people of faith, we have this sort of connection with them, and he got quite a lot of pushback from like his English side of the audience, and he didn't really understand why. But there's just those communities can't be reconciled here for good reason. You know, they've burnt some serious bridges, and they just need to fucking go home, and that's the end of it.
I don't know if you watched Dave's last stream, Adam, or Mitch.
No.
His last stream was probably the best stream I've ever seen him do. And I know Lady of Shalott was on there for a while. And like, I'm a mod on Dave's channel, one of the only 2 channels I am a mod on. I think Dave has finally lost patience with the left, to be honest. I don't think you're going to see him doing a lot more debates with them. I think he just lost patience with them totally now. And he's all the better for that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that last debate he did with that guy.
Yeah, that one. Yeah,
I can't remember what the guy's name is, but yeah, I actually said to him on Twitter after that, like, you should probably, it's kind of post debate at this point, just leave them. There's no such thing as a true believer on their side that he kept trying to track down.
No, and this guy is supposedly, by the way, that guy you're talking about, Adam, as I'm sure you know, he's actually supposedly on the right, but of course he's not really. He's a shitlip, basically. But he's a former soldier and a former cop. And those are the most dangerous guys. I mean, it's like, I suppose if you looked at me, not that I would have ever been a cop, but I'm a former soldier. And if you looked at me 6 years ago, I probably wouldn't have. I mean, I would have been better than that bloke is now, but I wouldn't have been that far removed from him back then. You know what I mean? Like, but some of us get some sense and move, and some of us don't. Biaki in the chat is saying Americans don't care. I don't think that's always true, mate. There are some Americans who do, so you're not being totally fair there, mate. And Tim of Arminius is pointing out that was counterpoints, the bloke he was talking about.
Yes.
That was the debate. Yeah.
He was the one that joined Lauren Southern in that debate against the leftists on the Canadian schools debate a year or two ago. He was kind of a bit of a ball and chain then. Like she was. I'm not the biggest fan of her, but she was
same,
sort of cleaning house.
But she's better than he is. Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
totally, mate. Totally,
and of course, addendum to that, that those people walked out of that talking all sorts of crap about her. She lost. She was supposed to be going and speaking at universities, but she was disinvited because of things like that. And then it turned out a couple of years on that everything she said was just true. There were no mass graves, and the data that they claimed that they had didn't show what they were claiming it did, and so on and so forth. But yeah, anyway.
I mean, they were saying, basically, for anyone who doesn't know, they were saying that the Catholic Church in Canada was deliberately killing Canadian Indians, like the Canadian indigenous dudes, which they certainly weren't. Canadian indigenous children were dying from exactly the same diseases that killed all children back then.
Yeah, I looked up when this was going on. I looked up what the survivability rate of children was in Canada, and it was 50%. Well, only 50% would reach the age of 15.
And that was all kids. It wasn't,
Yeah, like it was like even here in the UK, it was a little lower. But if you went to somewhere like Eton, even Eton has a graveyard on the school grounds.
Of
I think
kids.
it's because like if you go back far enough, like it was too much effort. It was too difficult to move the body because it was essentially a boarding school.
Yeah. And of course, Eton is the top school in England still.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that was the richest dudes in England, and even their kids were dying because kids used to die back then.
Yeah. They did say, I know that there was a lot of like Catholic priests themselves who ran these schools wrote about how underfunded they were and how bad some of the conditions were. But funny enough, even as late as Trudeau's father being in office, his very government was turning down requests for more resources to these schools, who were themselves complaining about the bad conditions.
But the idea that somehow white Catholic people were deliberately killing these kids is just nonsense. It's utter crap. I mean, go to any graveyard. I mean, as you just said, Adam, about Eden, for example. But go to any graveyard in Britain, Canada, Australia, anywhere you like, and look at the graves from the 1890s, and you will find heaps and heaps of children because they used to die a lot then. It was just medicine was not advanced enough to stop them dying. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure. Michael K, 19th century fan, is talking about Trudeau, who everyone says is Castro's illegitimate child. Which I
I'd
think
probably
is
have
quite-
more respect
quite-
for him if that was true. But
Yeah, indeed. I did wonder on a couple of photographs I've seen of that dude what was happening to his eyebrows, but who knows? We will probably never know. You know, it's like Biden kicking his dog. I mean, did Biden kick his dog deliberately, or did Biden kick his dog because he's so senile he didn't even see the poor little dude? You know, who knows?
it does kind of look deliberate to me, but I'm not entirely sure.
Well, I thought it was. I have to say, and I did think it was. I have to say, and people who kick dogs, yeah, don't like that at all.
No.
Don't like anyone who kicks dogs will kick children, as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in kicking dogs or children. And personally, I would happily, do very nasty things to people who kick dogs or children. That's my own opinion. But yeah. Tom, Tomb of Arminius says Biden has cruel eyes. Well, yeah, I mean, but there's so many drugs in those eyes. Who knows what his eyes really like? You know, you can't really tell. Can you? Obviously, in Minecraft, Susan, on YouTube, because you're not really allowed to play Biden. I mean, you know, they've been giving some of those dudes on the January 6th thing, Adam and Mitch, some of those dudes who went into the US government building and they were let in by the cops. Some of those dudes are getting like 20 years in jail. It's just insanity. It's insanity. And of course, they shot dead that ex-American Army girl who was completely unarmed and was no threat to anyone. But nothing's going to happen to the black dude who shot her. Nothing whatsoever. It's just insanity again. There we go. I would say to people, if you want to ask questions on the stream, you can do so. If you look at the top of the chat, you will see there is an entropy link. So you can send us a super chat and we will definitely answer any questions you have at the end of the stream. But if you don't, that's fine. I do believe, I totally agree, mate. Vex Peril says utter cowardice, and Victor Claros says the American Army, unarmed ex-American Army lady was Ashley Babbitt. Yeah, killed her stone dead. Nothing happened to him. That's all cool. But anyone who walks into that building, even though the cops invited them in and opened the door, some of them are getting 20 years in prison. It's insanity. It's absolutely insanity.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what else I can say about that, to be honest with you. Someone's asking me, who is your favorite Napoleonic field marshal? I would say Field Marshal the Duke of Wellington, very, very easily, Duke Valentino. My favorite Napoleonic field marshal is Field Marshal the Duke of Wellington, who was probably the best general of the Napoleonic Wars. And I include Napoleon in that. So there we go. But I am a bit biased because I'm an Englishman and a Brit. So, in the Grand Army. I like Ney. Ney was brave, but I don't think he was the most intelligent of them by any means. Soult was pretty good. Soult was pretty good, but very corrupt. You know, he would steal as much as he could from anywhere he went. But that was true of most of the Napoleonic marshals. Messina, Messina was pretty good. Medico the Unremarkable says, I'm not a fan of Napoleon or his marshals, to be honest, because he was Bernadotte. That's an interesting one. The guy who became king of Sweden. Yeah, absolutely, that's an interesting one. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan of Napoleon and his marshals because, as far as I'm concerned, all Napoleon did while he was in power was make Europe weaker and weaker and weaker for that whole period, which I don't think was a good thing in the end. I mean, like even in 1914, the French were still suffering a birth deficit that was originally caused by the huge numbers of recruits who Napoleon used to call up in the Napoleonic Wars and probably get killed because it didn't really matter, you know. I have to
I
tell
mean, the
simple.
French.
Yeah,
I mean,
sorry.
the French
Carry
were
on,
still.
Mitch, carry on.
Well, the French were still hero worship him in the same way that, you know, the likes of us will hero worship Henry V, or I don't know.
Yeah. 100.
Like,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
I
it's
do
just-
like Henry V. Henry V is a much more based character than Napoleon, but yeah.
Well, the thing was, like, I don't know. I mean, I was playing like this historical fantasy mode where, let's say, Henry V, he lived longer and he secured this Anglo-French Union state or whatever. It'd just be a situation where, okay, we would be in the same country as the French. We'd have to have some sort of Anglo-French hybrid culture to keep it all together, which, I mean, given everyone knows how Germanically autistic I'm
would
Germanic
have been a problem,
Yeah.
mate. For sure, it would have
Yeah.
been. I totally agree. Simple Pirate is calling Biarki and saying, Biarki up yours, limey. I have to tell Simple Pirate that Biarki is not a limey. Biarki is an Australian, so I think you
What's wrong with a
should.
limey?
Well, there's nothing wrong with a limey, but I mean, the thing is, I'm guessing Simple Pirate is probably an American because, you know, limey is an American name, purely because the Royal Navy used to have limes added to their grog, their rum and water, to stop scurvy. Which it
Yeah,
did.
because we did base things like travel the oceans and conquer
Yeah,
the world.
you know, British warships used to have to travel the whole of the world's oceans, and limes stopped British sailors getting scurvy. So
Yeah, we endured conditions the human body wasn't designed for the sake of glory and conquest.
yes, we did. Yes, we did.
I
And
just don't find the whole limes thing
Yeah.
particularly
Yeah.
insulting.
No, I don't
I'm
find
sure
it
he doesn't
insulting
mean
in
it
the
that way,
least. I
but,
just think sensible Brits. They use limes. No scurvy. Sailors would conquer. You know.
yeah.
It's just stupid as when blacks call us what is it? Oh yeah, they call us snow ends.
yeah.
They call us. Which am I thinking? Okay, and I like snow, so I don't even get what that point is. Or is I know what?
Yeah,
also call us
but guys,
crackers.
don't guys. Honestly, in the chat, I'm just going to say to the chat here, we have so many enemies today in 2023. Stop punching each other and start punching our real enemies who are on the left. You know?
Yeah, no more
metaphorically,
Stop.
metaphorically, of course.
Yeah, no more brother wars. Bludgeon a Muslim today.
Well, not bludgeon, but you know, metaphorically.
Yeah,
because we're on
In the
YouTube.
craft minds,
So
yeah.
absolutely, 100%. But yeah, I honestly, dudes, don't fight amongst each other. Like, this is the one thing that annoys me is like you'll see Protestants fighting Catholics, you'll see people who are really religious fighting people who are less religious. You'll see the debates between all sorts of people on the right. And I don't support any of them. The only thing I do totally support, 100%, is I'm not going to support the LGBTQ trans thing because that is just I don't see how you really can do that on the right. I'm sorry, I just don't. Because we're supposed to be trad, you know, and that ain't trad. There's only two sexes, male and female. Anyone who claims to be another sex, they're not on the right. As far as I'm concerned, anyway.
And what would you say about a certain brown guy who platforms a troon on his show and will block you if you slag off said troon? Because
well, let's not really get into that, Mitch, because I know exactly what you're talking about. But on the other hand, I kind of like that particular channel. I just think he's wrong on that issue. All right, I do.
I mean, you say he's wrong on a lot of stuff, so it's a wonder it's not something like you. It's no wonder you don't just do some sort of, I don't know, analysis on, okay, should I bother following? But
what would be the point of that, mate? What would be the point of that? Would it? How would that advance us? You know, as being like the dissident right? How would that advance us?
What does
It
what does that
wouldn't.
certain brain guy do for us that we so desperately need that no one else can do?
He makes a lot of very good streams, man. I've got to say he does.
Yeah, it makes a lot of
Yeah.
historical scenes where he knows bugger all, so he has to depend on other people, like
Well,
to tell him
sometimes,
stuff. Which
yes.
he should.
Yeah.
I mean, he's meant to be an
sometimes.
academic, and yet he doesn't
Yeah.
do any research.
All right, Mitch.
Like
Mitch,
War of
Mitch,
1812.
Mitch.
So
I'm not. I don't. This is not a war I want to get involved in. All right.
I haven't even seen the 1812 stream yet, and everyone seems really riled up over it. Is it
Listen.
really bad?
The problem with that stream, and I did watch it, Adamant, is that obviously because it's a war, AA knows nothing about war, but
Yeah.
he doesn't pretend that he does. To be fair, but he doesn't, and he was relying totally, really, on Winston Churchill's book on it. And, the history of the English-speaking peoples. And the thing is, Winston Churchill would never say a single word against the Americans, basically, ever. So AA was already on the back foot. And this other dude comes in who absolutely does know a lot about that war, but he particularly knows a lot about
Bagsby.
George
Yeah.
Bagsby. But he absolutely knows a lot about the Americans fighting the Indians in that war, which were not central to the British war aims. I mean, it was subsidiary, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I do really like George Bagsby, but he is very much a sort of a classical American historian in that he's very
100%.
hyper-focused.
And he knows his stuff. Don't get me wrong. He really knows his stuff about what he knows about. But he was going on and on and on about what the Americans did to the Indians, which is, fine. I don't really care. And yeah, the Brits were using those Indians to distract the Americans and do all sorts of other things. But there was far more time spent on that than was spent on the actual important battles, like the 3 occasions the Americans tried to invade Canada and were totally defeated, or when Britain captured Washington, D.C., the American capital, and burnt the public buildings, not the private buildings, only the public buildings. And then, of course, they went on about the battle in the South in 1814, which was actually after the peace had been declared, so it had no effect on anything. So, Victor Claros is right. So Isaac Brock was the British commander who was extremely successful against the Americans. And, of course, the Americans sometimes go on about the naval war. And America started the war with about 6 frigates and a few smaller ships. But 3 of the American frigates were like enormously more powerful than any other frigate in the world. They had much thicker woodwork, much heavier guns, and far more guns. And so, they had I think in reality, the American super frigates like Constitution, etc., had something like 54 guns, whereas an average British frigate had 38. And the American frigates' guns were also heavier. So they would have 24-pounders instead of 18-pounders and this kind of stuff. And so they won 3 frigate actions early in the war. And also bear in mind, the best Royal Navy ships were not on the American station in 1812. They were busy fighting a life and death battle against Napoleon, around European wars. Eventually, the Brits started sending better ships to the North American station. And so Philip Broke arrives, for example, who was a gunnery expert with a very experienced crack crew on HMS Shannon. And HMS Shannon took about 9 minutes to capture the USS Chesapeake, from the first shot to the time the American flag was hauled down and the Brits had captured it. But he was a gunnery expert with a great crew. And by the end of the War of 1812, every single American warship was either captured by the British or was blockaded in port and couldn't get out. So, and Tomb of Arminius said they did say this on the stream. Yes, they did. They did. But they talked far more about various American skirmishes with Indians all over the damn place than they did about fighting the Brits or even the Canadian militia or even the stuff at sea. But that's just what went on. But the thing is, AA knows absolutely nothing about warfare. And to be fair to AA, he doesn't pretend he does. So he was at a huge disadvantage on that stream.
Can I just say, not deviating the subject in any way, but there was some conversation in the chat a little while ago, where Lady of Shalott was talking about when one of the times she was on and we were talking about grooming gangs and she covered some experiences. I think the episode, if anyone wants to go back and see it, is Splendid Isolation 130.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
I just had a quick blast through the back catalogue and I'm pretty sure that's the one.
Cool, man.
Anyway, carry on.
I mean, this is a subject that we come back to quite a few times because, I think it still goes on. It's just not covered. Yeah, very important. And when you look at it, you see what they tried to pretend was these girls were basically sluts, is what they tried to say, which is incidentally what the Pakistanis used to call them. But they called them white sluts or English sluts, you understand?
Yeah.
But, you know, some of these girls were 11 years old. I am sorry. 11 years old. And, yeah, it makes you damn angry. Or it makes me damn angry. And I know it does Adam and Mitch too. So, you know.
Well, I noticed that the reason I knew it was that episode was because Mitch, you actually left because it got you so annoyed, which is understandable.
Yeah, I know. I actually do vaguely remember Mitch saying, "No, I can't talk about this anymore." Yeah, absolutely right. Because it's utterly repulsive, as Ash and Duke said in the chat. 11-year-old little girls, these are children. You know, they're children.
But yeah. But did we want to carry on about this e-drama thing? I haven't really got much to say, but
look, all I say, I mean, you know, I used to do it a little bit, but I don't do it anymore at all. I don't punch right anymore. There's no point. It's ridiculous. We have too many enemies. That's my view on it. Yeah,
you do kind of like people call it purity spiraling, don't they? You do need some purity spiraling though. Like you should at least there should be at least a set standard, and it should probably say no troons. But
100%, I agree with that. But you know, I can't enforce that on other people.
No,
you will never ever see a troon on one of my streams. You never will. I'm sorry.
I mean, it is kind of being enforced because someone brought this up in the chat a little while ago. But you know, Morgoth said something about this at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of gave in and put down an authoritative word, and it did kind of stem a lot of that stuff. And I do also know some sort of insider information, which I won't repeat here. But
no, sure.
There are definitely a lot of people sort of at certain positions within the movement. You know, it kind of seems ironic saying that, but that do go to some lengths to try and you know, put some standards on it.
Yeah, look,
let's be honest as well. That isn't the first troon AA's had on his.
No, absolutely.
On his
there were at least two. I know that.
I understand his position, but I don't agree.
No, absolutely. That's my position entirely. I don't agree at all. Never have. And that's my hard limit. Like, I'm never having a. If you're a cross-dresser, if you're a bloke pretending to be a woman, you are not coming on my right-wing stream. I'm sorry, you're just not. Not going to happen. And I do think that people who allow that are wrong. I think they're wrong. That I will say. So, yeah. But this isn't going to happen on this stream. Biaki is mentioning Yiz the Eunuch on the stream. I think that is a different thing. I think that she was born with something. And I think that's slightly different. Like I'm not against Yiz the Eunuch, to be honest with you. I'm not. But as far as I know, that was not something that happened afterwards. That's just the way that person was born. So I regard that as a different story. All right. Like, I'm not completely in favor of gay guys, to be honest with you. I'm not. But are there okay gay guys? Yeah, some of them are, for sure. You know? Providing that's not the main thing about them, and providing they're not hunting out very young people. But yeah, Lady of Shalott, right? and we all know Lady Echelon. That's what I think, Lady Echelon. What I've just put up there in the chat on the screen. That's my thing, and I'm not anti-years at all, really. But that's not the same as people who are actual transvestites. Not the same.
Mm.
So there we go. That's my view on that stuff. But like I said, in general terms, don't punch right, boys. We have more than enough enemies without doing that. Simple Pirate is asking if we're Wignats. Well, I'm not, but I wouldn't say any of the people on this stream are Wignats at the moment, but I'm not for sure.
I don't even really know what classifies you as a Wignat. I mean,
yeah.
I will side with European people over other peoples, but I'll side with English people over Europeans if I had to.
100%.
And I'll side with Anglos over, Meds or whatever as well.
Yeah,
but
same. Me the same. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, but also we're just at a point where that's just completely unnecessary. Europeans can broadly just stay together. Stick together in the political sphere, and
like if someone says to me, "Are Italians or Spaniards or Greeks European?" I would say 100%. Yes, they are. Would I prefer Anglos over those guys? Yeah, 100% I would. But Italians and Spaniards and Greeks are absolutely European. Of course they are. So yeah.
I mean, I did go to the administrative building at I think you pronounce it Berchtesgaden, where the Eagle's Nest is.
Yeah.
And they've turned it into a. I met some great people there, like great Germans, but also there was this lovely old American couple that were really old, in their 90s, and they'd rented a BMW motorcycle and were going on a motorcycle tour across Germany.
Cool.
And but I went in the administrative building there, and they turned it into a museum to National Socialist policy, which is kind of surreal. It's so different to everything else you see in German museums. I'll be honest, I was walking around, I usually consider myself quite right-wing economically, but they had things like when you worked, you earned vouchers for holidays.
Oh yeah, they went on those ships. They went on those cruise ships and stuff, didn't they?
Yeah, and they also had like hot trips to Bavaria and stuff like that, or various national parks, and you could also buy obviously the first, Volkswagen, the first people's car. I don't know. I thought that stuff, if I had to,
some of it.
Yeah, I mean, if there was like some SDP like organization across the way that wanted to bring that stuff in, but they're also based on immigration, I'd happily side with them. That doesn't bother me.
Look, my issue with that, like Germany back then, pre-World War II, I'm not happy with like executing mentally handicapped kids. I'm not. I'm sorry. I would never support that. But the other stuff, some of it was fine as far as I was concerned. But yeah, there is bits of it that I don't really agree with, I gotta say. But mentally handicapped kids, no, I'm sorry. And like, it was really bad. Like they were feeding these kids food with no fat in whatsoever. So some of the nurses would try and surreptitiously give them fat, in their food. That's not good, mate. I'm sorry. So I'm not going to go with that. But yeah, a lot of the other stuff was fine. Some stuff. I would just say to Simple Pirate in the chat that he really should stop slagging off Aubrey Allman, please. Don't do that. That would be
well. I mean, let's bring this into the thing then, because obviously we made a comment on someone being brown earlier. If you're mixed, what's the ruling?
Well, look, I mean, if you, I gotta say, I have a bit of a dichotomy here, all right? But if you regard yourself honestly as English or British, and you are mixed, I'm prepared to accept that, so long as you actually do and you behave that way. Yeah. But you have to actually regard yourself as English and British and behave that way. I mean, take the dude who is in charge of, I think he's UKIP. Sky is he UKIP now? I'm not sure.
What, David Curtin?
Yeah, David Curtin. David Curtin.
Heritage
I don't have a problem with David Curtin, to be honest with you. I don't. You know?
Well, I mean, this is kind of the funny thing, though, isn't it? Because it's like I always think Liverpool is a really good case study for this, even though Liverpool's like entirely white. Well, depends on with Liverpool, for like now they say Scouse not English. They proclaim that they're all Irish. First off, I'm still very skeptical of that claim. Secondly, if you go back to like the 1950s, people in Liverpool would all still describe themselves as broadly English, even though they were going to like Catholic churches and
for sure,
and stuff like that. So
do you watch Joe Owens, Adam?
Yeah. Sometimes.
I mean, I think he's a good Englishman as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
But yeah, and it's like, but on the like the Liverpool thing, as soon as the culture sort of shifted to being anti-English, those groups all find a reason to sort of look outwards, and you'll see like people that are like quarter black that regard themselves as black, even though they're vastly more white than otherwise, and that's just because there's more social capital in being out group aligned than in group aligned. So if you got to the point where you could actually exact any sort of level of immigration policy that any of us would be happy with, the likelihood is that you've already created a sort of in-group looking culture anyway, where status and hierarchy is inferred based on those distinctions. And at that point, you're going to have people that are mixed race that are broadly always going to say, well, I'm English, I'm this, I'm that, and they align more with that English side anyway. But to be honest, when it comes to it, when you look at that, like, how's that going to look? What actually happens from there? Like, I'm not sure what you actually do with it. It's there's so few of them. I've never really bothered, to be honest.
Yeah, there aren't many. There are a few, like David Curtin, as you mentioned. I mean, that dude, I got no problem with that dude being English, all right, because I think he sees himself as English. But they are very, very much a minority, for sure.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's a few people in chat. Steve said, if it was 70 years ago, they'd be trying to pass us white. Yeah, 100%. Same as, and Duke Valentino, Alexander Dumas, the writer.
I'm totally agreeing with you guys. I'm just saying, but David Curtin, I've got no problem with David Curtin being an Englishman, because I think he believes he is, and that's fine. And those few who actually do, I have no problem with. But it is very, very much a small minority.
I think I'd have to see it with my own eyes to see how, like, the social formation works. Or if that happens,
you'd be able to tell at some point, for sure. I totally get what you're saying. But
what about you, Mitch? Though, what do you think?
I don't really know what to think, to be fair. But I'm thinking I've come across like half Japanese fellas in my distant right who are, like, I've got no complaints about them. Like they do. The thing about the mixed races, if they just only know the English side of themselves, they don't really look into, I don't know, let's have a half Japanese side or half Jamaican, whatever. Then you can make a learn to that.
I just think if you honestly believe yourself to be an Englishman and you want to be an Englishman, like not like a lot of these dudes who are paper Englishmen or paper Brits, like many of the elites that we have today, and lots of people who are in the media and all the rest of it, they don't regard themselves as in any way, shape or form really as being English or British. And they just want to slag off English and British culture and history and all the rest of it. I have no room for them at all. No room for them at all. But if somebody like Curtin believes himself to be an Englishman, which I think he does, and it doesn't attack English culture or history, which he doesn't, then I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But you have to be that way, and it is very much a minority of the even the mixed race people in the UK, to be honest, if you ask me. So yeah, that's just my own view. That's what I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
Yeah. See, because someone brought up AA again in the chat, which is like kind of how this kind of started.
Yeah.
I am gonna defend him on the English, the British thing. Is that, I mean, first off, I've met him like twice, and if you meet him, he just looks Welsh. Like as in, and I think that is also mainly because they've got that sort of apple body type that Persian people also kind of have a little of.
Sure, absolutely. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
you could probably say in certain lights maybe he has a tiny little bit of suaviness in him, but at the same time, like his opinion on this himself has changed, like because he wrote a long time ago when he was a bit more when he called himself a classical liberal. You know, back when he had the British on UO and stuff, he wrote an article. I think it's a bit unfair banning Simple Power. He's a good lad, but
yeah, I'm sorry, he was having a go at somebody I like, so he needs to stop.
All right, but and his position was at the time, he said like his father kind of grew up in the best, kind of grew up in Britain in the best.
By the way, he's not banned; he's only timed out.
Oh, okay. Kind of was came to Britain and was sort of in the best possible position to be integrated, which was that he was in some small Welsh town where he was like the only Iranian in the entire town, right? He had no position but to integrate. And I remember as well my grandfather, who was in the police out in Hong Kong, he used to say that because they all spoke fantastic Chinese.
Sorry, Alan, did you say your grandfather was a cop in Hong Kong?
Yeah, he was.
Oh shit, man! I never knew that. That would have been really cool back in the day.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, because his he called him his brother. They grew up together, but they weren't biological brothers. But his brother was the chief of the Hong Kong police as well.
Cool.
And he used to say that like they just learnt it because you just had to fit in, because you'd often go over there in very small groups, and you were integrated with these units that also had lots of Hong Kongers in them. And Hong Kong administrators.
Those dudes were dealing with like triads and like really serious. Big deal, mate. Kudos to your grandfather for sure.
Yeah, and he said you ate the food, you spoke the language, you had to pick it up. You had no other choice. He got quite homesick from it for quite a long time as well, because it was probably a bit of a fierce integration. But
I bet.
Yeah, and but they're all tough SOBs, as the Americans would say.
Yeah, for sure.
And he, but yeah, and the funny thing is, AA's position has actually changed a little from when he wrote that article, because he now says, like, despite his father being in the best possible positions to integrate, his father still just cares about nothing but what's going on back in Iran. And he actually said at one point, he said that was a big red pill for him.
I think I would also say this. Look, I went out with a very, very pretty chicky babe years ago who was a Persian girl, and she always insisted on Persian. And as you were saying, Alan, earlier, like, Persians are not in any way, shape, or form black. They're not even Arabs, But I went out with this girl, but she was a Persian girl, a bit like AA's family, and they left when the Shah was deposed. And I think that is a bit different as well, because these guys were basically chased out of their own nation.
And I'll be honest as well, like back in those earlier days, I was a bit more dubious of like AA's alignment, because I kind of thought a lot of his sort of Iranian non British side or non-European side kind of came through, but to be honest, like he comes out to bat for the British side quite a lot, the English side as well, even in a lot of instances. And
Yes.
like I remember when I went
Yes.
to the first Skildings event I went to, I remember him talking to Rupert, and I was sort of third wheeling, sitting there in the background. And he sort of spoke about sort of like Arthurian legends with quite a lot of sort of zeal. It was and I kind of, I don't know, my position on him kind of softened a bit after that. So I think, but again, you know, this is kind of the issue, right? Like if you push, let's say, a leftist, right, they'll get into this position where they get really copy and they start talking about integration, which is never something they cared about in the conversation prior to that point.
Yeah.
You can integrate some people in that you can integrate their children, but you have to be, you're talking about such a limited number of immigration, such a tiny amount over such a long period of time that you don't even really call it immigration by any standard we'd have today.
We can afford to take a handful of people. Britain's always taken a handful of people. Where the modern lefty twats lie is, you know, they say, oh, Britain's always been a country of immigrants. That's not true. It's been a handful of people, you know, and yeah, you can integrate a handful of people. You can't do it when it's tens of thousands, let alone hundreds of thousands every year. You just can't.
Yeah.
Biaki, I've got to disagree with what you're saying there, mate. I told you I went out of a Persian girl, and she was as white as I am. And the only non-Anglo-Celtic bit in my ancestry is I had a Spanish great-grandmother. So, you know, that's as far as I go. And she was as white as I am. So you may say what you like, but I won't agree with you on that one, Biaki.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not completely sorry. They might be pale in the same way that like Jews are, but they're not.
Yeah, but that's different. Yeah, that's a bit different. That's a bit different.
I don't because I mean I see white purely as a euphemism for European, and I just don't see them as.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, another distinction I heard someone make. I think they might have been targeting this at Keith Woods, but someone said like, you know, when you're hearing someone's opinion, think about the nation that they're from, and is what you're hearing the sort of resentment of a people that didn't really achieve much. And so when you look at it through that lens, you know, that you can kind of see why like Brits could get on like randomly with the Japanese or the Iranians, but but you know, Palestinians just piss us the fuck off, right?
Well, it also I'm happy to say that Richard Ford is in the chat. Good on you, mate. Happy to see Richard Ford. He's a good bloke. But yeah, look, we can argue about the details of this stuff, I guess. I basically think AA does more good for British nationalism than he does harm by a long way, and that's really my opinion. You know, my only really deep disagreement with AA is I'm not going to have trannies on my streams. That's the only real thing I think he's not right about, but he doesn't have them much these days, I've noticed. So there you go. And also he was wrong about Don LePlette, but that was like somebody giving him false information as far as I know. So there you go. You know, Don's a damn good bloke as far as I'm concerned, and I just think somebody gave AA false information about Don. But I made videos about that, so you know, there you go. But on the whole, I think AA is a plus to the Anglo-Celtic dissident right. I think he's a plus mostly. By quite a long way, actually. And I mean, the fact that he's mates with Morgoth, for God's sake. I mean, you know, are you going to find a more British dude than Morgoth? I don't think you are. So, yeah, that's my view. I mean, I don't know. You've met him, Adam. A lot of people who I like you, Adam, Morgoth, Dave the Distributist, those dudes are mates with Academic Agent, and I'm sorry, I kind of like these dudes, and so if they're all mates with him, I can't think he's a bad man, you know.
Yeah.
Including you, of course. But yeah, absolutely, that's my opinion on that. Because like, I kind of trust you guys' judgment, you know. And I mean, also people like Chris Gard, who I really like, and you know, yeah, people.
You need to do
I
that. You need
like,
to do that third part of that Aborigine stream.
Oh yeah, look, listen,
Or Australian settlers stream, I should say.
Yeah, I want to do that, but it's just a matter of like, you know, Chris became a dad not long ago, and it's when he's free, I'll do it anytime he likes me. You know, we have been talking on Twitter /X about doing a get together of Chris and Magnus Furious and Lady Schlott and myself and the Franklin, who are all great, well, apart from me, are all great Aussie YouTubers. And we've been talking about doing a get together, which I very much hope will happen. And the idea of that kind of is to like start setting up an Australian event after that, which I think Australia is well overdue for, to be honest.
Will you do it in Australia's summer or Australia's winter?
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure. Listen, all I have told people, Australian is saying that Franklin is a lovely guy, and he is. He's also one of the most intelligent YouTubers you will find. Really excellent, man. Been on streams with me a few times. But yeah, I don't know when we'll do it. I just said, look, if you do it, I'll talk at your event for sure, because I will. But hopefully it should be in Melbourne as far as I'm concerned. But you know, just because Melbourne is the lefty capital of Australia, which is the absolute place we should do that. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I do keep saying I'm going to try and travel for more of the events, see if I can do the American one, and if there's an Australian one, I'll go to that. I'll definitely go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on, I'm just trying to find something. There we go. Soram is correct. His Uncle Ted streams have been really good. They have. They're well worth listening to. He's also he does these things called what is it? Letters from Your Betters, which is like just totally destroying leftist articles in the press and stuff. He's a really good man. I like the Franklin a lot. Very, very intelligent bloke. So yeah, 100%. Mitch, did you have anything as a final roundup or anything like
that? I think like Duke Valentino brought up a subject of what do you think about tattoos, which
that's right up your street. Absolutely, mate. Do opine.
I was just gonna say like personally, because I veer more towards paganism rather than Christianity these days.
Sure.
I wouldn't say no to getting tattoos. But we're talking like tribal ones. We're not talking generic modern shit that girls especially do, like the roses. We're talking like, I don't know, like you'll get, let's say if someone were to get a tattoo of like a Ragnarok, which is like a Norse word for the end of the world or whatever. Like they were to get tattoos of that. Because I mean, Anglo-Saxons used to do tattoos a lot, and the Catholic Church you actually used to bollock us over it all the time. But the Normans actually took a bad habit as well when they conquered us.
They did. Yes, they did.
So it was like, you know, as much as I will hate the Normans, I cannot deny that's kind of based. Like the idea of the Anglo-Saxons and Normans, like getting the same tattoos together, like whenever a men fighting the French or whatever. I don't know. But because the thing was,
and of course, it then became huge in the Royal Navy gradually. So 100%.
Yeah. So the thing was, the Anglo-Saxons would get tattoos as a means of remembering loved ones or commemorating one's ancestors. We used to do it for warriors, especially, but that was back when we were pagan. The Norse did it, and however, after we converted to Christianity, it was sort of, you only did it to commemorate your ancestors. You didn't do it for warriors. You didn't do it for recreation. You didn't do it for anything other than that. And it was highly frowned upon otherwise, because the Catholic Church was trying to change the attitude about tattoos Like they have attitude of you should never change your body in that way, which
Interesting. I don't have any, all right. And the reason I don't have any is the only reason. My grandfather got tattoos when he served in India, in between the wars, and had quite a few on his arms. And when my father joined the army, he said, "Don't get these." To his son, he said, "Don't get these," and he didn't. And when I joined the army, my dad said the same thing to me. He said, "Don't get any," and I didn't. So I don't have any tattoos. People in the chat are saying women look trashy with tattoos. I think it depends. I went out with a lady for a long time who was actually a psychologist, would you believe, whose whole back was a giant Japanese dragon. A whole back. It was like, and it was actually rather pretty. But you couldn't see it if she was normally dressed, you understand. I don't understand at all how women ever get tattoos on their legs or somewhere you can see them. That's insane to me. But I'm not, English kings, the late Queen's father had tattoos from when he was in the Royal Navy. It was just what you did. So I'm not totally against them.
I do think tattoos on women are pretty trashy. I used to be kind of against them, but then I saw Nicholas the second, the Tsar, with a tattoo.
Yep.
And then, of course, as you said, I saw lots of like the older, of the royal family back when it was a better than it is now.
Yeah.
And some of them had tattoos. It was kind of which I thought was kind of cool. And as you said, Mitch, like there is a sort of like a strong tradition, a pagan tradition, definitely. But
I'm not real into the tramp stamps that almost every girls get these days in the small of their back. I'm not into those particularly. And I think,
but even the sleeves they get, where it's just
any woman who gets a tat on her arms or her legs that you could see all the time, I think she's just insane, and there's something wrong with her brain, to be honest. I mean,
but even
I can put up with a chick who's got one little tiny tattoo somewhere, on her waist that you can't normally see. There's a little girly tattoo. I don't really care about that, but I'm not especially in favor of it. But if they have one, that's not the end of the world as far as I'm concerned. But yeah.
Yeah, so Survivor Driver will have tattoos where it's like, he'll have tattoos of, let's say, Anglo-Saxon or Viking stuff. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, there's very sort of like Germanic pagan stuff. Those tattoos I tolerate, but I don't think you can really do them on men. I mean, not men. I don't think you can do it on women.
On women. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no, I haven't got no problem with that, mate. Like I knew a girl once who had a pig tattoo on her foot, but she was into the Master and Commander series, of books about Nelson's Navy, and Nelson sailors in that era, they used to get a pig tattoo quite often because pigs are really good swimmers. So the idea was if you got that tattoo, you wouldn't drown. It was a sailor's superstition. And that was why she got a little tiny pig on like the instep of her foot or something. I got no problem with that, to be honest. It's kind of cute in a way. But yeah, but in general terms, like women who have lots of tats, I don't have any time for, generally speaking. And I don't have any myself, but that was purely because my grandfather told my dad not to get any, and my dad told me not to get any. And we kind of did the same thing. I do, by the way, my son does have a small tattoo, and he's serving in the Royal Navy. That's why he has one. So,
I mean, when you said, Mitch, I'm not talking about modern crap. I'm talking about like tribal tattoos. It just gave me the flashbacks to when I used to go to the gym, and like every guy there had one of those like cliched, crummy, sort of modernist tribal tattoos, rather than something actually historic or meaningful to themselves. It's just kind of lame. But yeah, one's based on your heritage, a perennial tradition, as you said, honoring warriors and the like. That's That stuff's all mega based.
Yeah, and Survive the Jive has an excellent channel, by the way. This dude is, yes, he's a pagan, so some Christians might not like him from that point of view, but he's a father, he's a husband, and he's a damn good historian, by the way, and he often really destroys some of the leftist narratives around British history and stuff. I'm a big fan of Tom Rouse, I think is his real name, isn't it?
Yeah, Tom Rouse or something like that.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Survive the Drive. Do go and
he's been putting out a lot of really solid content recently. I think he's been trying to sort of level up his channel a bit.
100%. It's a great channel, as Victor Caleros is saying in the chat. Go and check him out by 100%. But yeah, I mean, look, as I said, look, I'm not fully in favor of tattoos. I'm not fully against them. I think definitely women are better with fewer of them. Is the only thing I'd say. But yeah. Anything else you wanted to go on about, Mitch?
No, I can't think of anything.
Anything you would like to show at all?
I mean, there's my Twitter, but I'm going to get rid of it soon because they put warnings on all of my posts now.
Why?
I mean, there was one post where I put redacted in brackets, so I didn't even. So that's all I put, and they put warnings on all of my posts now.
Because I don't understand that, mate. Because I follow your Twitter channel, and like it's by no means one of the most edgy, I would say, if you know what I mean. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean you post some good stuff, but it's not particularly edgy as far as I can see.
Yeah, so but that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to get rid of my Twitter soon because I think it's not just that I'm shadow banned to high fuck on there as well. As well.
Well, I mean, mate, there is a reason this channel only has 1,410 subscribers, and it's because we're not heavily pushed by YouTube's algorithm, I can tell you. But you know.
Yeah, that's that is a good little outro. Yeah, hit the subscribe and the like button, guys. We do mean it. Not to sound too lame and gay, but it does.
100. I always tell people to do that. But yeah, absolutely do, please. Like this channel took, I don't know, what was it, Alan? You started it at the same time as me and the other chap who was on the chat recently. Three and a half years ago or something, and like it's taken us that long to get to 1,410 subscribers. So yeah, do subscribe, chaps and ladies. It would be good. Atman, anything you would like to finish up with, or shill, or anything like
that? No, nothing from me. Thanks.
All right, but you do go and check out Atman's Bowden Bomber channel. He's got some good stuff on there. That would be cool. You do have some nice stuff on that channel, and you should do a bit more.
I do need to make some more. It's just hard trying to find Bowden clips. Like a lot of his talks are him talking quite a bit more plainly, and to make a good edit, you kind of need one where he's speaking with a good amount of zazz, you know.
Yeah.
And finding one on a nice, suitable subject that you can get good clips for and put something together for is, it's quite tricky sometimes.
I can't help thinking you could probably get his Punch and Judy thing and make something out of some of that, maybe.
Yeah. To be honest, I think the Punch and Judy one's very underrated. There's a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah, no, it is. It's pretty cool because he's talking about history on that, you know, and how people used to watch this stuff. But yeah, it is. It's excellent. But he's also being extremely theatrical, which you know, the dude was a great orator. You know, I mean that's what he was. He was a great orator at a time when oratory was a lost art in the West for the most part. So yeah, Jonathan Bowden, you've got to check him out, guys, if you don't know. All right. I think that will probably do us for this week. I'm going to play us out with a tune, if I may. And by the way, this one is from the Royal Irish Regiment, which up until 1922 was one of the best regiments in the British Army. And some Americans might be surprised to know that the 7th Cavalry pinched this tune from assorted Irish regiments of the British Army. So there we go. Alrighty. Okay, that was obviously from the excellent channel Patriotic Archive. If you want to hear some really good traditional military and traditional music, especially from the British Isles, but also from other parts of Europe, do go and check out Patriotic Archive's excellent channel. And that was the regimental march of the Royal Irish Regiment, which was a fine regiment of the British Army. And the thumbnail for that was the Royal Irish Regiment at the Battle of Tel El Kebir in Egypt, when Sir Garnet Wolseley and his British Army absolutely trounced the Egyptians. So there we go. Thank you very much to my guests, Mitch and to Adam, for joining me this evening. Made it a much better stream than it would have been if it had just been my boring self. I'm sorry for the early boomerisms, but a stream I do without boomerisms will be a stream I'll probably never ever do. So whatever. And I would just say this to people in the chat: never let the bastards grind you down. We ain't lost yet. We're not gone yet. We're still here, and we still can win. We still can win if we are as anywhere near as brave and courageous and intelligent as our ancestors were. We still can win, I think. So yeah,
100%.
Yeah, thank you, Adam, thank you. So anyway, guys, that's what I think. And I'll check you soon, guys. Go well. We'll see you next week, if not before.
See you all later.
Oh, hang on, I didn't check. Oh, damn it.
Oh.
Never mind. I can't do it now. I can't do it now anyway. Don't worry about it. Damn it, and I did have one. Fuck it. All right. To be fair, it was Richard Ford, and you'll understand that I didn't see it. All right. So, yeah. All right. I'll do it next week. Adam and Mitch, please, next week, will you guys remind me that I have to do that?
Yep. All right. I forgot as well, to be honest. Usually I check, but
yeah, no, I was just going to go and check, and then I forgot because I did that. But it was Richard, so I think he'll understand. But first thing I do next week.
Go for it now, can't you?
Are we still alive?
Yeah.
Oh, if we're still alive, I'm sorry. Then I'll do it. I beg your pardon. I thought. Okay, I did actually get a donation on Entropy from the inimitable Richard Ford, who is a friend of mine, and he's just given me a donation of $10 from USD, $10, and he's saying buy a laptop. And thank you, Richard. So there you go.
True.
All right. And I will in due course when I have enough to do so. That's the whole point of it. But yeah, thanks, Richard. You're a good dude. Okay, I think we are about here. Oh, I didn't end the stream. I know. I see why I could do that. Okay, thanks. I'm doing more and more boomerisms the longer I go on. But anyway, never mind. All right, guys. Thanks to the chat. Interesting comments from everybody. Thank you to Richard Ford. Thank you to Mitch. Thank you to Adam.